So you want to build yourself a 300SL Gullwing Replica, but you have no idea if it's going to cost you 20,000 or 220,000. So in today's episode, I'm going to give you a detailed breakdown and walk around of all of the big ticket parts and prices so you can see what it takes to build one of these icons. The world of Gullwing replicas, recreations, might seem fairly secretive. Parts and part suppliers and sources are generally kept very close to people's chests. The manufacturer of the body that I bought as part of that body package, there is supplied a massive detailed breakdown list of where the parts are, what you need, both for the interior and the exterior, so you can really get a good idea of what one of these things costs to put together. Now, that obviously doesn't stop you from going elsewhere to source parts. You know, you may look at making and fabricating parts, and generally you can sort of tailor one of these to make one as expensive or as cheap as you want. And that is basically the purpose of this video. I want to show you what you could build one for if you were to go fairly basic, bare bones, versus the route that I am personally going, which is still doing, as you can imagine, you don't build one of these cars if you have no knowledge of, you know, fabrication and basically everything else that goes along with building a car. But I have sourced good quality parts from reputable sources that are known on the Gullwing builders scene and have built a reputation for turning out, you know, top end, top quality parts, because that is basically what I'm striving for. I really am setting myself quite a high benchmark of what I'm trying to achieve with this car. So the parts that I'm wanting to fit to this car, I am incredibly particular about, and I want the detail and the quality of anything that goes into this build to be basically as high as I can possibly afford and find. So let's get down to it. We're going to have I don't want to call it budget or cheap, because, you know, it still is going to total a decent chunky amount, but we have let's call it budget. We have the budget version, and then we have the my version. Call it what you want. It's not the top end, but it's the direction that I'm going that I feel comfortable with. So let's crack on with it, and we'll talk about the donor car straight off the bat. Before we do dive into the video, let me just make clear that the prices that I state for my build do include shipping, taxes and VAT. Stay to the end of the video where I do apply that tax and the VAT and the shipping from my experience to that budget cost, so you can really understand the more realistic figure, because there is quite a massive variation in between those two up until the end. So all of these prices are going to be in UK pounds, because that is where I am, so you can do your own conversions. And obviously the market, for example, the donor cars, is very much dependent on the country that you are based in. So let's kick off with the donor car. And I will say that all of these parts and prices are only being used to build a classic looking narrow body car. So when I say narrow body, I don't mean it's got the more modern flared arches that some manufacturers have started producing. It's not the Roadster. You know, this is a classic looking narrow bodied coupe. You need to be getting yourself the correct donor car to start with, and you need to find yourself a Mercedes SLK. In particular, it is the R170 variant, which is between 1999 and very early 2004. The length of the wheelbase is exactly the same as the Gullwing, so that will help you immediately creating that correct proportioned looking car. So an R170 SLK in the UK can be had for less than £1,000, and that is for quite a ropey 200 or 230 compressor. And You are chopping most of this car away, so you probably could go down that route if you have faith in the mechanics and the undercarriage of these cars. They are old, they will be susceptible to rust, so you know, you pay your money and you take your choice. For the purpose of these totals, I'm going to up that budget slightly to say £2,500. Around that number, you can get yourself a mid-mileage 200, 230, or maybe even a 320 SLK, which will give you a good foundation to base your project on. So there we've got the first number, £2,500 for your budget version. On the upper end of the scale, looking at the current market, there are only 5 AMG 32s for sale at the moment. I think one's around 7 and they go all the way up to 13. So if you have your heart set on, as I did, starting with the best of the best, then the figure that I'm going to plug in for this tally will be £7,500. For me personally, I think I paid £6,200 for mine at the time. It was deepest, darkest winter here in the UK. It's a good time to buy a convertible. So I feel now, looking at the way the market's going, I got a really good deal on this car. On to the next biggest thing, the body. So I covered in an earlier video all of the reasons for me selecting the manufacturer of this body that I did. The fact that this is a second generation mould taken from an original car. Now what I mean by that is there is the original 300SL Gullwing. A mould was taken from that body by a chap called Tony Ostermeyer. He then made a number of turnkey replica 300SLs, and this body was taken from one of those cars. So there is provenance in this body. Some of these parts that, again, I detailed in the earlier video, you can see the weld marks, you can see the pot rivet marks, you can see the repairs and the patches taken from that original car. And it's having that slight DNA of that original car, which really sold me on going with this particular body. That on top of the fact that it is such a comprehensive kit in terms of the interior parts that have been supplied with this kit. So if you want to check out the real deep dive that I did do into this body, then I'll put the link up there and you can just geek out as much as I did in the reasons behind me selecting this particular body. Now, as you can imagine, this wasn't the cheapest body on the market. I think there are only 3 or 4 manufacturers of these worldwide. Prices start at the lower end. I think they're around £8,000. Obviously do the conversion as you need to. Now, none of these prices, should I say, include shipping, taxes, VAT, should any of that be applicable to you. So we are just talking hard figures before anything is landed with you. So we're talking at the lower end of the market, £8,000 for a body, up to and above £12,500. Now, I know there are maybe 1 or 2 suppliers out there that are above that. I've not seen any real photos firsthand of anyone building cars based on those bodies. So I would use the 2 figures that I've just given as your benchmark. So in the budget corner, we'll go 8,000. In my corner, we will go £12,500. For me, wheels and stance are absolutely make or break for any project car. So I have obsessed for hours. There was a whole video dedicated to the revisions to the suspension that I've done to the car to try and get this thing sat exactly as I wanted it to in preparation for the wheels to be fitted. Now, suspension wise, if you are setting yourself a budget, then you could absolutely just get yourself a set of lowering springs, get the car dropped a couple of inches and have it sat over a set of wheels. And yeah, you are on a really good road to having yourself a correct looking Gullwing. For me, I have gone down the road of air ride. I have got AirTech adjustable dampers and airbags. Now they are a company in America who I bought the kit from. And the management side, I've gone pretty much as best as you can get, and the car will be fitted with airlift 3P management. So the combination of the airbags, adjustable dampers and air management, that costs me just over £2,900. Budget side, I mentioned the lowering springs, £200, 50mm drop, and you are well on your way to having this car sitting as it should do. So budget 200, me 2,900. Hand in hand with suspension is obviously the wheels. Now, the world is your oyster when it comes to your wheel choice, and it is such a personal thing. You know, there really is no right or wrong. For me, you would have seen last video that I shared with you guys that I've had made a set of 17-inch custom split rims with the center of the wheel actually being based on a 14-inch steel wheel and chrome hubcap, just to keep that period feel of the car. Now, I've got some tyres sat over there waiting to be mounted to these wheels, so I can give the final tally up that these wheels and tyres, as they will sit hopefully in a few days on the car, these cost me £3,000. So that will go in that column over there. Now, if you're on more of a budget, you could pick up a set of 14-inch or 15-inch steel Mercedes wheels from eBay. Just looking round, they're £150, £200. Allow a similar sort of figure for some period correct, slightly higher sidewall profile tyres to give you that retro feel. So £400 could see you well on your way to creating a car with that correct sort of period feel. So one of the things that I wanted to raise, and it is probably one of the most boring parts of this build, and it's going to be one of the most time-consuming parts of this build, and that is the body support structure, the thing that marries this body to the donor car. The work that goes into these and the fact that everybody's differs in terms of how they support this body, the material they used, and the purpose of the support structure. Now, what I mean by that is some people do use it just as a way to give this body some rigidity. Others, including myself, I'm going to be looking at building a structure that ties some strength back into the car and also offers me some protection by making it basically a roll cage. So looking at costs, I think materials are going to be around £1,000 realistically by the time it's all said and done. If you're having to pay somebody to fabricate this structure for you, then multiply that by 10. You know, this will be horrendously time consuming to make, so the hours will just absolutely fly by. So giving myself £1,000 for materials, I'm going to put that into both columns. So budget 1,000, my version 1,000, and obviously I can fine tune that number when I actually get round to doing it and finishing it up. So with that out the way, let's get on to some far more shiny and pretty things. Even before the body and donor car had landed in my garage, I was trawling the net, buying as many parts and pieces as I could in preparation for everything to arrive, so I could really crack on and not be held up by waiting on parts that I needed for whatever particular job I was dealing with at the time. Let me show you this first item, and these are the classic struts that hold open the Gullwing doors. Now, for me, this was a critical detail that I wanted to get right, and I hunted high and low for the correct source for these struts. Now, these are based on the originals in terms of their shape, diameter, length. Inside is a spring and not a gas strut, which was exactly in line with the original cars. It's details like this that I really wanted to try and pursue. So the budget option, which I will cover now, is you can use a good old gas strut, you know, a bonnet or boot gas strut. Some people have then clad those in aluminium tube to give it this sort of period look. So budget wise, I would allow a couple of gas struts, 20, 30 pounds, and that would do the job. Another 20, 30 pounds for some stainless steel tube to clad them. call it £50, and you are there. These, because of what they are in terms of their correctness, these were £200 each. So for 4, they cost me £800. Now you might wince, but trust me, it gets much better. Door hinges, probably even more important to me than the struts are the door hinges. I hunted high and low. I reviewed and ruled out probably 7 or 8 other door hinge types before settling on these. Now, they are made by the same company that makes the struts. All of these parts are based on original drawings, which again, so important to me. So these are, what are they, cast? Yeah, I think they're cast alloy. The rib that you see around this top edge by the hinge pivot is all exactly as it would be on the original cars. These still need to get polished and chromed to be absolutely correct. But as you see them in their raw form, these were £1,250. The budget version, I've not seen any pictures, but I know they are out there. And they range in price from around £300 to £400, £600. So in keeping with the sort of budget style of things, let's go for the £300 versions. So we'll go £300 budget, £1,250 for my versions. It's the initial impact of this car which I'm hoping is going to make the difference. And for me, it's having the details, the items that your eyes are first drawn to when you'll see the car, having those correct, like the door struts, like the hinges, and like this part I'm going to show you now, which is like an absolute piece of jewellery, and I love them so much. What you can see here, and I'll slowly turn this round so you can see the guts, are the door handles. Now these things are handcrafted, but it's the thing like the brass lock latch, just that contrast in materials, and then the workings on the inside, they are a thing of absolute beauty. So you have the door handle, this is the interior side, and here you can see the outside, if I can try and hold it at some sort of angle. So you have the door handle, and then you have the equally important but rather plainer looking striker plate, which fits on the inside the interior sill, and this will be polished and chromed. These are ready to go and just need to be polished up a little bit before they can be fitted. Let's start with the budget version. So again, I've heard rumours and seen price lists that you can get the handles and the striker plates for £575. These, again, they have come from the same manufacturer as the door hinges and the struts. These are made from original drawings, so they are absolutely bang on. These are £1,700, including the striker plate. So £575 there, £1,700 there. Exterior brightwork and lights isn't a fun one on the Pocket either, but it's a necessity. If we're building a classic looking Gullwing, then you need that exterior chrome work to build yourself a sort of cohesive looking car. If you're going for like an outlaw racer, you may decide to do away with the bumpers, and yeah, fair play to you. But for me, it is chrome bumpers, grille, overriders, possibly, you know, all of the correct badges and side strips that you would see on an original road car. So down at the back, I'm looking at here at a box of very tired, original looking Gullwing rear lights. You can see here the lenses with the surrounds, the chrome's pitted, the lenses are not in very good condition. Got some perished old rubbers that need replacing. And the rarest, most expensive parts of the lot, which I've already given a bit of TLC to, are the actual rear light housings. Now, these are original. You can buy repops, which I've seen online for €600 each. There are far cheaper alternatives, and I will try and find those to put into the budget column. And I think they're a couple of £100, but I will correct myself. The tired lenses and the perished rubbers and these two housings cost me £1,150. Now, what I didn't realise, because I didn't buy these in person, was the fact that they didn't come with the reflector pieces with the bulb holders on the inside. Now, looking online, these are another €600 each, but I did manage to find a second-hand set, which I have bought. So I could build myself a complete set of rear lights, and I think these now owe me £1,400. So what I'll do in the budget side, I will look up the cheaper housings. You can buy repop parts, but I think it does work out to be quite costly. I'll have to make up a number. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm going to put that here. And then for me, on my side, I'm not done with these because I need to get the outers re-chromed. I need to get some new lenses. I don't know what these are going to cost me. So at the moment, I will put in the number as it stands of £1,400. Now's a good time to cover off the front and rear bumpers, the grille, the side stripes, the headlight bezels, you know, the big shiny exterior chrome items. Now, whoever you talk to, they only recommend one company, and they are based in Vietnam. I'll put the link in the description because I can't remember their details off of the top of my head, but bang for buck, you cannot go anywhere else. The quality of these parts is absolutely spot on. And like I say, everyone just goes to them because there's no point looking anywhere else. So for the front bumper, rear bumper, this front grille that looks absolutely epic, and the chrome seal side strips are £1,450. Now, I sort of said at the start of this video that whether it be the budget or the not so budget, we were trying to build a classic recreation. So with all of the correct bright work. If you're building, like I say, an outlaw, you may decide to do away with the bumpers, but for the purpose of this sort of exercise, I'm going to put that £1,450 in the budget column and then £1,450 in my column. Cramming myself down the front of the car just to cover off the last couple items on the front, which are as critical as everything else, obviously headlights and chrome bezels. You may be able to source some second-hand lights, scour eBay. I kept a watch, but gave up hope. I just got impatient. So I picked myself up, I think it was from Germany, 2 brand new headlights for £500, I think they were, and I think that was included delivery. I've not yet bought the chrome bezels because it's a very fine detail, but you need to be very careful about where you buy these bezels from because the inner diameter of some of the bezels are actually too large. So you end up with this quite unsightly gap around the headlight. If you've managed to find the correct bezels, they have the correct inner diameter, which means they fit really beautifully snug around the actual headlight itself. So I think those are around £200, maybe £250. So headlights and bezels, £750. If you were to pick up some second-hand or cheap repop bezels, I think they're about £100, and I would say allow £300 for the headlights. So there's 4. So 4 in that column, £750 in that column. We're getting there, I promise. And if you've stuck it out this far, then you've obviously got a real keen interest to see what the final total is of the cost of building one of these things. And one of the last few, and these are big ticket items, it's to do with the glass and the window rubbers and the surrounding chrome trims, which I will touch on at the end because they are mind-numbingly, eye-wateringly expensive, but we'll cross that bridge in a few moments. Now, what I need to say about the glass is You must get your glass as soon as humanly possible. You know, you need to be building your body with the glass, offering it into position, because the last thing you want to do is get too far down the road and you realise it doesn't fit. You just need to be working together with the two, understanding what each needs to get everything married up and working happily together. So with that in mind, and luckily for me, the manufacturer of this body that I bought does also manufacture the windscreen, the rear glass and the rear quarter windows. Everything is laminated, it is curved and fitted exactly to the body. So I've offered everything into position and it really does look, I'm off to a flying start. Now, what I will show you, this is a dusty rear quarter window. You'll see that it is convex in the shape of it from top to bottom, as well as from front to back. So it does fit the contour and the profile of the body absolutely perfectly. So that, hand in hand with reproductions of the original profile of the window rubbers, means that I'm a heck of a long way down the road of getting everything to marry together. Depending when I release this video, you will have seen this scruffy box all the way from Italy. Now, the company that I'll put the link to in the description makes reproduction seals for everywhere on the Gullwing body. And it was something that was important to me to get those correct profiles. So this box for all of the rubbers necessary for this car, I think they were £1,600 or euros, whatever it is. I will put that number over there now to add into the total. It basically just takes away so much just faffing around trying to find a cheaper alternative for the, you know, any of the gaskets. I just couldn't be doing with it. I wanted to know that what I bought would work how I needed it to. So there is that option. So what I'll put in the budget side, and I know some people have gone down that route, they have found alternative profiles that do work with the body and the glass. And I would have thought you could buy all the seals and gaskets relatively cheaply. And I would say I'll put in a nominal figure of £300 because I am just plucking a number out of the air, knowing on old project cars what, you know, a window seal costs per metre. And it really is a very minimal amount. But for the correct profiles and the correct shape and size, you have to pay for it. And I have. So that is everything covered other than the door glass. What you can see here, and I do not want to drop these, is the correct two-piece door glass. The original cars have an opening cigarette light at the front of the door, and this was something that was just an absolute no-brainer for me. So I had to source these from an alternative supplier. So these have arrived. I wanted to have that correct opening front quarter light. And that takes me on to something that really is going to make you take a sharp intake of breath. So let me show you. So we're still talking about the front door glass, and what's in this box took quite a substantial amount of man logic and man maths to try and justify the purchase, because in this box you are looking at some beautifully handmade brass door furniture. Call it, I don't know what you want to call it. This is basically what mounts the opening front quarter lights and also the main door glass in the doors. Now, if you know, on the original cars, this frame is actually removable along with the glass to give you, you know, an open window. These windows obviously don't roll up and down because of the shape of the door. So the glass actually comes out and the quarter light stays in place. So these come with all the fixtures and fittings and hardware necessary to get them installed into the door. But you can imagine something like this, handmade to order, doesn't come at a cheap price. So for A pair of these for the front doors was £3,500. If you can find them secondhand, then good on you. They are like hen's teeth. I did miss one side. How long you could be waiting for the other side to turn up is how long is a piece of string. So it's one of those details that I just couldn't live without. So this is the number that was paid. The budget side of things could be done far, far simpler, and you could do away with all of this if you decided just to run a sheet of polycarbonate for your door side window. You could pick up £60 worth of polycarbonate, so that would make it a very cost-effective solution. Now, in terms of the front and rear screens and the rear quarter glass, the manufacturer of my body makes a complete set of laminated glass for €1,600. I'll put the conversion and I'll add that into the budget column. That's a route I've gone, and I am so glad that I did. I've had to get my tyre seat out again because this last item is a big one. And it's something that I've not been able to justify to myself at the moment. So I'm still tossing up ideas of what on earth I'm going to do. And it's in relation to, unfortunately, the glass and the window rubbers. It's something that looks so unassuming you couldn't imagine it comes with this price tag. What I'm talking about are the chrome inserts that go into the window rubbers, that spread the rubbers to keep everything tight and watertight around the body. I think there is one company that manufactures them and a couple of companies that resells them. And looking into trying to find anywhere else to get them from seems like a bit of an impossibility. So the market has been well and truly cornered. And if you want these trims, then you have to pay up or get lucky and find them secondhand. So for a full set of chrome inserts for the rear window, front window and rear quarter windows, the cost is £5,000. I can't justify that at the moment. I'm trying to work on an alternative, but I can fully understand why people do look for alternatives. And I have seen people use the chrome trim from Morris Minors and original Austin Minis. And when you look at these alternative products from the Minis or the Morris Minors, they are a much narrower chrome insert and they just don't look correct. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, unfortunately. So for me, there is only one option, but it's just about how I get there. So with the budget column, just don't use them because you're using your own profile rubber that you found. You could use the mini inserts and you could get 1,000,000 meters of that for about £4. So it really is so cheap. In the budget column, I'll allow £50. In my column, I'm going to put in the provision of £5,000, but there has to be an alternative. And I will share with you guys when I do find that alternative. But just at the moment, that's the number that is going to go in there. So bodywork and paint. Now, I'm going to assume that you guys out there all have a reasonable level of experience when it does come to bodywork. If you do need to pass off your kit to a body shop right from the very start because you're unable to carry out the work, then obviously the price is going to be so much higher than where I'm going to be aiming for. So my plan is to obviously have all of the doors, bonnet and boot fitted, have them all gapped as well as I possibly can. So we're going to be aiming for a 3mm gap. I think I'm going to shoot for. Generally speaking, the bodywork would be prepped with any light fillering work already done before I then pass it off to the body shop for that final fettle, those final little finishing touches that really do sort of elevate it, which I don't have the touch or the experience to do before that final primer, paint and lacquer stage. So With experience of previous projects in mind and knowing how the market has gone in terms of a good respray here in the UK, I'm at this stage going to be budgeting £8,000 for that work to be carried out by the body shop. Now, if you can obviously do the priming or in fact the painting yourself, then you could just be looking at material costs, and fair play to you, but I'm not going to assume that for this exercise. Now, I'm not saying 8,000 is the blanket figure, and I'm sure you could get it done for much less. So in the budget column, I will actually put in, let's say 5,000. It could be less, could be a touch more, but you want a really good quality paint job to show the car in its best potential. Now, the interior is a whole massive area of the project, which at the moment I've not really started diving into. What you could do with your own car, if you really are keeping everything absolutely as cheap as possible, is to keep the original SLK seats, keep the fuel tank where it was if you're not bothered about that rear cargo area in the back of the car. You could reuse the dials and gauges, modify the dash. You know, you really could put together an interior with a very, very small budget. But like I've mentioned, I'm going to be putting prices to these for those out there that want to create a classic looking car, you know. So you will have the low back buckets, you will have the dials and the correct dash with the chrome trims and things of that nature. So the big ticket items that I will cover, and these prices are still to be fine-tuned. I've still to explore some other part suppliers. Certainly the manufacturer of the body is starting to make their own interior pieces also, so they would be less than I'm currently looking at from other suppliers out there. So the big one that everyone must have, in my opinion, is the iconic flip steering wheel. Now, if you try and find an original, you could be looking around £2,500 to £3,000. There are replicas out there for a shade less than 2,000. So it really is just your own personal preference of the originality or the reproduction. Now, for me personally, I have no issue with a reproduction steering wheel. So I'm going to allow £1,800 for the ivory flip steering wheel with the correct mounting boss. So that's going to go into my column. And what I will do is allow that same amount into the budget column also. Dash wise, if you're fitting it out with the correct period looking gauges, then you really can pick those up from anywhere really. There are so many reproduction retro looking gauges that you can alter the wiring yourself to suit the back of those gauges and then get them fitted as necessary. Me personally, I have gone down the road of a plug and play retro gauge system. The parts are on their way to me at the moment, and I don't know the full figure, including the import and the VAT. So I will plug that figure now into my column so you can see what those gauges did cost me. What you do also need to allow for is the chrome trims on the dashboard. You know, it's the very subtle details that start making the difference, and those are incredibly expensive. So you could explore alternative suppliers. You really are looking around £2,000 to complete the look of the dashboard, not including those gauges. So in the budget column, I will allow a nominal figure for your own supplied gauges. And like I've said, I've gone plug and play, so that has already been accounted for in mine. So you've got the steering wheel, you've got your iconic dashboard set out. The rest of the money that is needed is going to be in the retrim. Now, you may be able to do some yourself. And again, I'm taking that you have had some experience of working with leather or material, even if it's just sticking it to relatively flat panels. You know, it all helps doing the work yourself to keep down the costs for others. So I have got a period set of low back buckets, which came as part of the body package. If you need to source those yourself, then I would allow maybe £300 or £400, depending on where you get them from. Now, the big chunk of the money is obviously going to be dependent on how much of that retrim work you can do yourself. I've certainly had a fair bit of experience, but I do know my limits. I don't have a sewing machine. I haven't done any stitch work. So things like the seats, I would have to send out. So at the moment, because in my mind's eye, I am shooting for quite a high-end, very complete looking interior retrim, I'm going to be allowing £1,000 for that work. And you could certainly do it for a lot less than that. But even sending out your seats and a few other little trims and bits and pieces that may need stitch work, I'm going to allow £2,000 in the budget side. And finally, there are a few tiny badges around the original cars that I am looking to fit, but my goodness, they come with some hefty price tags. Now, down at the back of the car, on the rear deck, the boot, the trunk, whatever you would like to call it, there are the classic Mercedes roundel and the 300SL badge. Now, there are a couple of companies out there that do make them, and they come with a fair old hefty price tag, although I have heard of a cheaper source out there. So in the budget column, I will put in the lesser price. I've not seen the quality, so I really can't comment. In my side, I'm going to allow for the upper figure because I've seen the badges, I know the quality of the finish, and it's something that I really want to get true and correct. And same goes for along the side. There is a small little Mercedes-Benz badge that goes down the side here, and that comes with those price tags. So it's something else. If you want that detail, then make sure you've got your wallet ready. So we're now at the very final stage, and unfortunately, as I mentioned at the start of the video, in the budget column, there are still the tax, the VAT, and the shipping costs to be added to the parts that would apply. So I have calculated those up and I've added that into the total. So here you can see the budget to your door here in the UK, you will be around this figure. Now, it is still a huge number, don't get me wrong, but I'm hoping it has shed some light and certainly sparked some fire and interest should you ever want to build one of these things. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's certainly been a real labour of love putting all of this together, so I am hoping it has been of some use and interest to you guys that have made it right to the end. Now, coming up in the next episode, we are back to business, I promise. There will be a good chunk of work being done to the car. So if you haven't done already, please hit that subscribe button and tune in for the next video, and I will catch you next time.